My name is Marina Ellis, and I was 35 years old when my husband called me a useless housewife in open court. He said it while his new girlfriend sat 2 rows behind him with her legs crossed and a soft little smile on her face. She never worked, Wesley told the judge. She never contributed. She sat at home for years while I carried everything. She can barely manage herself. How was I supposed to build a life with that? Then he turned slightly, just enough for the people in the room to hear, and added, "She's just a useless housewife. She never carried real responsibility." He was asking the court for 70% of the marital home, no spousal support, and reimbursement for $42,600 he claimed I had wasted during the marriage. I did not cry, I did not shout. I reached into my bag and placed a blue care binder on the table. Inside were 4 years of medication charts, therapy notes, hospital discharge plans, insurance appeals, meal logs, and the signed statement his mother had written with one working hand after her stroke. My mother-in-law was sitting behind him in her wheelchair, unable to speak clearly, but very able to tell the truth. The judge opened the binder, read for a long moment, then looked over her glasses and asked, "Mr. Kincaid, who managed your mother's medication, therapy, meals, insurance calls, and hospital discharge plan for the last 4 years?" Wesley stopped smiling, because the answer was me. Before I tell you what happened next, welcome back to Hush and Tell Stories. If you have ever had your invisible work dismissed until a document finally named it, this story is for you. Tell me in the comments what responsibility your family pretended not to see, and subscribe if quiet truth is the kind of justice you understand. I met Wesley Kincaid when I was 26, and still believed that being needed was proof of being loved. We lived in Merrow Creek, South Carolina, a river town with old brick sidewalks, church steeples, and front porches where people waved even when they had already decided what kind of woman you were. I worked as a certified pharmacy technician at a community health clinic on the east side of town. It was not glamorous work, but I liked it. I liked the order of it, the labels, the dosage checks. The way a mother's shoulders dropped when you found a coupon that made an inhaler affordable. The way an elderly man trusted you to print his medication list in large font, because he was too proud to say he could not read the tiny one. I had grown up practical, not cold practical. My father died when I was 17, and my mother worked double shifts at a hotel laundry until her hands cracked every winter. I learned early that love often looked like doing the thing that needed doing before anyone asked. I made dinner. I filled out school forms. I watched my little cousins when my aunt was late. I became the person who knew where the spare key was, which bill had grace days left, and how to stretch one roasted chicken into 3 meals. Wesley noticed that part first. He came into the clinic one rainy afternoon to pick up medication for his mother, Beatrice. He wore a charcoal suit and a wedding-level smile, though we were not at a wedding. He worked in regional sales for a medical equipment company, and he had the practiced charm of a man who could make a receptionist feel like a decision-maker and a nurse feel like the only person in the room. "You saved me," he said when I found a prior authorization error on Beatrice's medication and called the doctor's office to fix it. I remember that sentence because it felt big then. You saved me. It was not true, not really. I saved him $48 and a second trip. But Wesley said gratitude like it was champagne, and I was young enough to think a man who praised competence would respect it later. Beatrice Kincaid, his mother, was a retired elementary school principal with sharp eyes, a soft Georgia accent, and a laugh that made you think of porch swings. She had raised Wesley mostly alone after his father left, and Wesley carried that story like a medal. Everyone in Merrow Creek knew he was Beatrice's devoted son. He said it often. He had moved her into a small brick house 3 blocks from his apartment. He took her to church on Easter and Mother's Day. He posted photos of her on her birthday with captions about sacrifice, strength, and the woman who made him who he was. What I noticed later was that devotion photographed better than it functioned. In the beginning, though, I believed the photo. Wesley courted me carefully. He brought coffee to the clinic. He remembered that I hated carnations and loved tulips. He called me steady like it was the prettiest word he knew. He admired that I worked. He said he respected women who handled real life without drama. "Marina," he told me on our 5th date, "you have a calm about you. I need that." Need that. Word should come with a warning label. I married him 18 months later in a small ceremony at Magnolia Hall, wearing a simple ivory dress my mother helped me hem at the kitchen table. Beatrice cried harder than my own mother did. She took my hands after the vows and said, "I prayed he would marry someone kind, but God went and sent somebody capable too." Wesley laughed. "Mama, don't scare her off." I thought it was sweet. Maybe it was for a while. The first 2 years of our marriage were not perfect, but they were ordinary enough to feel safe. I worked full-time at the clinic. Wesley traveled 3 days a week for sales calls. We bought a 3-bedroom house on Lark Road with a wide kitchen window and a back deck that looked over a line of pines. We paid bills from a joint account, though his paycheck was larger, and he liked to remind me of that in small ways. He never said my work did not matter, not then. He said things like, "My salary handles the big stuff," and "Your check is great for groceries and little extras," and "You're lucky I don't make you stress about the mortgage." The mortgage came from our joint account, but the language mattered. His money built, mine helped. That difference sat quietly in the walls until the day Beatrice had her stroke. It happened on a Wednesday morning in late September. Wesley was in Raleigh for a hospital vendor presentation. I was at the clinic filling antibiotic prescriptions when my phone buzzed with a number from Merrow Creek General. Beatrice had been found on her bathroom floor by a neighbor after missing her morning walking group. She was awake but confused, with weakness on her right side and slurred speech. I called Wesley first. He did not answer. I called again. Voicemail. Then I left work. I found Beatrice in the emergency department, eyes wide with terror, hair still damp from the bathroom floor, one hand gripping the sheet like it was the edge of the world. She tried to say my name, but it came out broken. "I'm here," I said, taking her hand. "Wesley is on the road, but I'm here." Her eyes filled. That was the first time I became necessary in a way no one could edit later. The doctors confirmed a stroke. Not the worst kind, they said, as if there is a kind of stroke that feels polite. She had right-sided weakness, expressive aphasia, swallowing precautions, blood pressure changes, medication adjustments, and a long road ahead. Wesley arrived 6 hours later with his suit jacket over one arm and panic on his face. "Mama," he said, rushing to her bedside. "Mama, I'm here." Beatrice cried when she saw him, so did he. I stepped back and let them have that moment. I believed then that stepping back was generosity. I did not yet know how easily a woman can step back so often that everyone forgets she was the first person in the room. For 2 weeks, Wesley was the public son people expected. He posted updates. He thanked prayer warriors. He brought flowers to rehab. He told nurses he would do anything for his mother. Then the daily work began, the unphotographed work. Medication at 7, noon, 5, and 9. Thickened liquids. Swallow exercises, physical therapy 3 times a week, occupational therapy twice, speech therapy every Monday and Thursday, blood pressure logs, insurance calls, transportation forms, bathing assistance, meal planning, fall prevention, mood swings, tears, appointments, laundry, nighttime confusion. Wesley's devotion had a calendar problem. He could love his mother loudly for 10 minutes. He could not build his life around her care for 4 years. At first, I tried to help while keeping my job. I drove Beatrice to therapy before my shift. I called insurance during lunch. I meal prepped on Sundays. I set up a pill organizer with color-coded stickers because her right hand shook and the labels were too small. I wrote instructions on index cards and taped them above the counter. Wesley praised me in the beginning. "You're amazing," he said. "I don't know what we would do without you. My mother trusts you more than anybody." Those sentences warmed me until I realized they were also soft rope. 3 months after the stroke, Beatrice was discharged from rehab with a recommendation for 24-hour supervision for at least 6 weeks. Insurance would cover limited home health, not enough. Private care was expensive. Wesley said his travel schedule was non-negotiable because his income carried our household. He wanted to move Beatrice into our guest room temporarily. Just until she's stronger, he said. I asked what temporarily meant. He kissed my forehead. Don't turn love into a contract, Marina. That sentence should have frightened me more. Beatrice moved in the next Saturday. Temporarily lasted 4 years. I left my job 6 weeks later. Not because Wesley forced me with one dramatic command. It was softer than that, and therefore harder to name. He said the clinic could replace me, but his mother could not. He said my paycheck barely covered what a caregiver would cost. He said I had always wanted the home to feel warmer. He said, "You're better at this than anyone we could hire." He said, "It's only for a season." My supervisor cried when I resigned. She said they would take me back if I needed work later. I smiled and said I was doing what family required. That was the language I had been trained to use. Family required. What I did not understand was that when family requires something from a woman long enough, it eventually starts calling the sacrifice her nature. There was another quiet pattern that grew around us during those years. People praised Wesley for the care I gave. At church, women would stop him after service and say, "Your mother is so blessed to have you." He would lower his head modestly and say, "We do what family does," while I stood beside Beatrice's wheelchair with her medication bag on my shoulder and applesauce cups in my purse, because she needed something soft with her noon pills. At his company holiday dinner, the regional manager toasted Wesley for balancing leadership with devotion at home. The room clapped. Wesley squeezed my hand under the table like we were sharing the honor, but when the photographer came by, he leaned toward the camera with Beatrice on one side and Camille from marketing on the other, because I had gone to the restroom to help his mother change a pad. The photo went into the company newsletter. There he was, devoted son. There I was, nowhere. The first time that kind of erasure hurt enough to name, Wesley told me I was being petty. "Do you want a medal for helping my mother?" he asked. We were standing in the laundry room. I was folding Beatrice's therapy towels. He had just come back from a dinner where a hospital administrator had asked how he found time to manage his mother's care, and he had smiled like a saint. "No," I said, "I want you to stop accepting credit for work you did not do." His face changed. "You have gotten sharp," he said. "No," I said, "I have gotten tired." That was not the same thing. Tired women are often accused of becoming mean because they stop decorating the truth. The money pressure also became part of the story, though Wesley later pretended it had not. A private caregiver agency quoted us $11,200 a month for the level of care Beatrice needed during the first year. Wesley nearly dropped the folder on the kitchen counter. "That is robbery," he said. "It is labor," I answered. He did not like that. So we did not hire them full-time. We hired help for 2 mornings a week, then 1, then none when Wesley said the mortgage and his travel costs were too high. I became the missing invoice, the cost that disappeared because a wife absorbed it. I began writing the agency quote on the inside cover of the blue binder. Replacement care estimate, $11,200 per month. Not because I planned to charge anyone, because I needed to see the number somewhere outside my own aching body. If a stranger did it, it was skilled care. If I did it, it was just what Marina did. The first year, I documented everything because documentation was how I stayed sane. I bought a blue 3-ring binder and labeled it Beatrice Care. Section 1, medication lists. Section 2, therapy schedules. Section 3, hospital and clinic visits. Section 4, insurance calls. Section 5, meals, swallowing notes, and weight. Section 6, expenses. Section 7, signed care instructions. I was not building a legal file. I was trying not to forget which day the neurologist changed the blood pressure medication, which therapist wanted 3 repetitions of the hand exercise instead of 5, which foods made Beatrice cough, which pharmacy could order the dissolvable tablets before the weekend. Caregiving is not one task. It is 1,000 details holding hands. By the second year, Beatrice could walk short distances with a cane. Her speech improved, though some words still stuck behind frustration. She could say yes, no, Marina, pain, water, tired, and Wesley clearly. Other words took effort. Long sentences exhausted her. Writing became easier than speaking, so we kept a yellow legal pad near her chair. She wrote more truth than people expected. Wesley visits like a governor. Tell him I need socks, not sermon. Your chicken soup is better than his speeches. Once, after Wesley posted a picture of himself holding her hand with the caption, "Taking care of the woman who gave me everything," Beatrice watched me read it, took the pen, and wrote, "He took the photo. You changed the sheets." I laughed, then cried in the laundry room. Wesley did visit. That was part of what made the story hard. He was not a cartoon villain. He did not abandon her completely. He came home from work. He kissed her cheek. He asked how she felt. He bought expensive pillows and a recliner that did not fit the row. He paid for a ramp at the front door and made sure every neighbor knew he had paid for it. But if Beatrice woke confused at 2 a.m, she called for me. If she choked on thin water, I was the one who remembered the thickener. If the pharmacy shorted her pills, I was the one on hold for 40 minutes. If insurance denied another round of speech therapy, I wrote the appeal. If she cried because her right hand would not button her blouse, I sat with her until she let me help. Wesley saw the outcomes and called them home. He did not see the labor and call it work. That difference became the crack in our marriage. At first, I tried to talk to him. "I need help," I said one night after Beatrice had a bladder infection, a fever, and a panic episode that left both of us shaking. Wesley loosened his tie at the kitchen counter. "We all do, Marina." "No, I need actual help, scheduled help. We cannot afford full-time care." "I am full-time care." He looked at me then with something like irritation disguised as reason. "You know what I mean." I did, that was the problem. He meant paid care. He meant care that came with invoices, tax forms, uniforms, and professional distance. He did not mean the wife in the hallway at midnight cleaning urine from the floor while his mother cried from embarrassment. "I gave up my job," I said. "And I support us." The sentence landed quietly. He heard it too. I saw it in the way his face tightened. Then he softened his voice. "I did not mean it like that." But he did. He meant it exactly like that, only he had not meant to say it before it was polished. The third year was when Wesley started staying late at work more often. At first, I believed him. Medical sales has dinners, conferences, client meetings, long drives. Then the explanations became thinner. He came home smelling like restaurant wine and perfume. He guarded his phone. He started buying new shirts. He went to the gym at hours that seemed designed for witness protection. Beatrice noticed before I admitted it. One evening, while I was helping her practice writing loops for fine motor control, Wesley's phone lit up on the coffee table. A message preview appeared. "Camille, still with your patient wife." I saw it, Beatrice saw me see it. She tapped the legal pad until I handed her the pen. She wrote one word, "No." I folded the paper and put it in the binder. Not because I had a plan. Because by then I had learned that records were the only room where I did not get talked out of what happened. Camille Arden was a marketing consultant at Wesley's company. She was 30, stylish, and posted inspirational quotes about choosing yourself. He told me she was just a colleague, then just a friend, then someone who understood the pressure he was under. The pressure. That was what he called having a wife care for his disabled mother, while he fell in love with a woman whose main responsibility in his life was admiring him. The affair came out the way most affairs do, not through a dramatic confession, but through carelessness. A dinner receipt in his jacket, 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine, 1 flourless chocolate cake. He had told me he was at a hospital procurement meeting. The restaurant was a rooftop place near the river, not a conference room. I placed the receipt on the kitchen table. He stared at it, then he sighed, as if I had made him tired by noticing. "I am unhappy," he said. I looked at him. "Your mother is asleep in the next room." He flinched. Do not use her as a weapon. That was when I understood how the divorce would go. Not because he asked for one that night. He did not. He cried. He said he was confused. He said he loved me but had lost himself. He said I had become consumed by caregiving. He said our marriage felt like a hospital ward. He said he needed partnership, not duty. I listened. Then I said, "Your mother needed care. You called it family when it was convenient. Now you call it a hospital ward because another woman does not know what the room smells like at 2 in the morning." He left for 3 days. Beatrice asked where he was. I told her he was working. She looked at me with tired eyes and wrote, "Do not lie for him to me." So I stopped. The divorce petition came 5 months later. Wesley was furious at first because assisted living made him look like less of a hero. Then he realized it made the divorce easier. He filed first. His petition said we had grown apart after I withdrew from marital partnership. It described me as voluntarily unemployed, financially dependent, emotionally rigid, and unwilling to support his professional growth. He asked the court to award him a larger share of the marital home because he had been the sole income earner. He asked to deny spousal support because I was capable of employment and had chosen domestic idleness. He asked for reimbursement for what he called excessive household expenditures. Domestic idleness, I read T. Hat phrase sitting alone at the kitchen table while the washing machine thumped in the hallway with a load of Beatrice's blankets. I had brought home from assisted living because she liked the detergent I used. Domestic idleness. There are insults that hurt because they are false. There are insults that hurt because the person saying them watched the truth happen and chose the falsehood anyway. I hired an attorney named Miriam Pate. She was not flashy. She had short silver hair, careful eyes, and a voice that made even bad news feel organized. Her office smelled like coffee and paper. On the wall behind her desk was a framed quote, "Tell the truth, bring receipts." I liked her immediately. At our first meeting, I brought the blue care binder. Miriam looked at it, then at me. "How long did you care for your mother-in-law?" 4 years. Full-time? Yes. Did your husband acknowledge that in the petition? No. She opened the binder. 20 minutes later, she removed her glasses and said, "Mrs. Kincaid, your husband either does not understand what you did, or he is hoping the court will not. Both can be true. One often helps the other." Miriam explained that family court would consider many factors: income, earning capacity, marital contributions, non-financial contributions, caregiving, sacrifices made for the marriage, health, property, and conduct that affected finances. This was not going to be a movie where one binder made a judge slam a gavel and hand me everything. Real courts do not work like that. But documents matter. Patterns matter. A spouse giving up employment to provide years of care for the other spouse's parent matters. "We need corroboration," she said. "I have medical records, therapy calendars, insurance appeals, and discharge plans." "Good witnesses, Beatrice." Miriam paused. "Your mother-in-law? Yes. Will she testify? She cannot speak easily. Can she write? Yes. Would she be willing to provide a statement?" I thought of Beatrice's legal pad. He took the photo. "You changed the sheets." "Yes," I said, "she would." Miriam leaned back. Then we asked carefully. No pressure, no drama, her health comes first. That mattered to me, because even after everything, I did not want Beatrice used. Not by him, not by me. At assisted living, I found her in the sunroom near the window, wearing a lavender cardigan and watching 2 women argue quietly over a puzzle piece. Her right hand rested on a folded blanket. Her left hand held a pen. She smiled when she saw me. "Marina," she said, slow but clear. I sat beside her. "I need to ask you something. You can say no." She frowned, already suspicious. I explained the divorce petition, not all the cruel parts. Enough. Wesley had said I did not work, did not contribute, did not carry responsibility. Miriam wanted to know if Beatrice would be willing to write what she remembered about her care. Beatrice listened without interrupting. Then she reached for the legal pad. Her writing was slower now, larger, uneven. He said what? I swallowed. He said I was just at home. Her face changed. Not confusion, anger. She wrote, "Bring me paper." I did, more paper. For 2 hours, with breaks, water, and her nurse checking twice, Beatrice wrote. When her hand cramped, she rested. When words would not come, she pointed, and I waited. I did not suggest sentences. I did not finish thoughts. I wrote nothing for her. Her nurse, Naomi Clark, witnessed the process and later signed a note confirming Beatrice wrote the statement herself, with rest breaks and no coaching. Beatrice's statement was 3 pages. The first line said, "My daughter-in-law kept me alive. My son visited for photographs." I read it and put my hand over my mouth. Beatrice tapped the page. "Read," so I did. She wrote about the first night after rehab when she wet the bed and cried, and I changed everything without making her feel dirty. She wrote about the pills I crushed and measured, the therapy exercises I practiced with her when she wanted to quit, the insurance calls, the doctor visits, the meals, the choking scare, the urinary infection. The winter night Wesley was at a company dinner, and I stayed awake with her fever until dawn. She wrote, "My son loves me, but Marina cared for me. Those are not the same thing." I looked up. Beatrice's eyes were wet. She wrote one more line. "Do not let him make you small to make himself tall." That line went into the binder. In the weeks before the hearing, Miriam made me practice answering questions, not dramatic answers, short ones. She told me family court was not a place to pour out my whole heart just because someone finally had to listen. It was a place to tell the truth clearly enough that the record could hold it. When his attorney asks why you did not return to work sooner, do not apologize for caregiving, she said. I will try. No, do not try, answer. So we practiced. Why did you leave the clinic? Because Beatrice required full-time supervision after her stroke, and our family could not afford the level of care recommended. Who decided that? Wesley and I discussed it, and I agreed because he said it would only be temporary. Did you keep records? Yes. Why? Because medication errors, insurance denials, therapy schedules, and blood pressure changes required accurate records. Miriam nodded. Good, not because you knew he would betray you, not because you are obsessive, because care required accuracy. Care required accuracy. I wrote that sentence on a sticky note and put it on the front of the binder. We also gathered witnesses, not many, enough. Naomi Clark, the nurse from assisted living, agreed to testify if needed that Beatrice was capable of writing her statement and that I had been listed as primary contact because Beatrice requested it. Beatrice's former speech therapist, Granton Velez, provided a short letter stating that I attended almost every therapy session for 2 years, learned the home exercises, and submitted practice logs weekly. The pharmacy printed pickup histories showing I had collected Beatrice's medication, refills 91% of the time. The hospital records listed me on 3 discharge plans. Wesley's attorney objected to nearly everything before the hearing even began. Miriam expected that. People who benefit from invisible labor often panic when it gets indexed, she said. I smiled for the first time that week. My own preparation was not all legal. Some of it was emotional. I had to stop wanting Wesley to admit the truth before the judge did. I had to stop imagining he would walk into the hearing, see his mother, and suddenly remember the nights I slept in a chair beside her bed. I had to stop believing the better version of him would arrive if the room became serious enough. That is one of the hardest things about betrayal. You do not only grieve what happened, you grieve the person who keeps failing to become who they almost were. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in Hawthorne County Family Court. I wore a navy dress, low heels, and the pearl earrings Beatrice had given me on our second Christmas together. I did not wear them to make a point. I wore them because they reminded me that I had been loved in that family by at least one person who understood what care cost. Wesley arrived with Camille. She wore cream, which felt like a choice. He wore a dark suit, a blue tie, and the face of a man who had practiced sincerity in a mirror. He looked good. That was one of the unfair things about certain betrayals. They do not always show on the person who committed them. Beatrice arrived with Nurse Naomi from the assisted living residence. She was in her wheelchair, gray hair brushed neatly, legal pad in her lap. Wesley looked startled to see her. "Mama," he said, stepping forward. She looked at him, then at Camille, then back at him. She did not smile. That was the first time I saw uncertainty cross his face. The judge was Honorable Elaine Sutter. She was in her late 50s, with dark hair pulled back, reading glasses low on her nose, and the kind of calm that made lying feel risky. The courtroom was not grand. Beige walls, worn benches, a flag in the corner, a clerk typing steadily. But to me, it felt enormous. Not because of the law. Because for the first time, the room where Wesley described our marriage would not belong to him. His attorney went first. He described Wesley as a hardworking provider who had carried the financial burden alone, while I remained outside the workforce by choice. He said I had become overly attached to caregiving and resistant to returning to productive life. He said Wesley had supported his mother financially, supported me financially, and now deserved a fair division based on actual economic contribution. Actual economic contribution. Miriam wrote something on her pad. I kept my hands folded. Then Wesley testified. He was good at it at first, smooth, sad, reasonable. He said he had worked long hours because he had to. He said our marriage became lonely. He said I refused to seek work even after Beatrice's condition improved. He said I spent years hovering over his mother because I needed to feel necessary. He said he paid the mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, repairs, and medical extras. Some of that was true. That is how good lies work. They stand on pieces of truth and stretch. Then Miriam asked, "Who prepared your mother's medication after her stroke?" Wesley adjusted his cuff. We both helped. Miriam looked at the binder. "Who is listed as the caregiver on the discharge plan, dated November 14th? He glanced at his attorney. I would have to see it. She handed him the copy. He read. His jaw tightened. Marina is listed there. Who attended the caregiver training before discharge? He shifted. Marina did. Were you present? I had work obligations. Who signed the SWAL? Lowing precautions acknowledgement. Marina. Who attended the caregiver session after your mother's second fall? Marina. Who was called by the assisted living residents last year when your mother had a medication reaction? He snapped. She made herself the contact. Judge Sutter looked up. Miriam said calmly, "Did your mother request Marina as contact?" Wesley did not answer. Miriam handed another paper. This is the intake note signed by Beatrice Kincaid, witnessed by Nurse Naomi Clark. It says, "Call Marina first, Wesley travels and forgets details." Is that your mother's signature? He looked at it. Yes. Camille shifted behind him. I kept my eyes on the table. Then his attorney tried to repair the damage by redirecting. He asked Wesley whether he loved his mother. Of course, Wesley said, voice full. He asked whether Wesley paid for household expenses. Yes. He asked whether he had worked hard. Yes. He asked whether I had earned income during those years. Wesley looked at me then. No. Then his attorney asked, "How would you characterize Mrs. Kincaid's role during the marriage?" That was the moment. Maybe Wesley thought he needed to sound wounded. Maybe he was angry. Maybe seeing his mother behind him made him want control back. Maybe Camille's presence pushed him into cruelty because men like him often perform strength for the wrong audience. He looked toward the judge and said, "She stayed home. She did not build anything. She did not earn anything. She acted like being around my mother made her some kind of saint, but she was just avoiding real work." Miriam's pen stopped. He continued, "She's just a useless housewife. She never carried real responsibility." The courtroom went quiet in that particular way. A room goes quiet when even strangers know a line has been crossed. I felt the words enter me, not as shock, as confirmation. After all those years of lifting, washing, calling, logging, driving, feeding, and staying awake, this was the sentence he had been carrying under his polished one. Miriam turned one page in the binder and said, "Your Honor, may I approach with Respondent's Exhibit 16?" Judge Sutter nodded. Miriam handed up Beatrice's statement, the care summary, and the discharge plan. The judge read, no one spoke. The clerk kept typing. Beatrice sat behind Wesley, her eyes fixed on the back of his head. Judge Sutter looked at the first page for a long time, then the second. Then she looked over her glasses at Wesley. Mr. Kincaid, she said, who managed your mother's medication, therapy, meals, insurance calls, and hospital discharge plan for the last 4 years. Wesley opened his mouth, closed it. His attorney said, Your Honor, caregiving responsibilities are not disputed in general, but... The judge raised one hand. I asked Mr. Kincaid. Wesley swallowed. Marina helped. Judge Sutter looked back at the binder. Helped. He said nothing. The judge read aloud, not the whole statement, only the line that would follow me for the rest of my life. My daughter-in-law kept me alive. My son visited for photographs. A sound went through the courtroom, not loud, a breath. Wesley turned halfway toward his mother. Mama, he whispered. Beatrice lifted her legal pad. She had written one sentence in thick black marker before the hearing. Truth now. She held it where everyone could see. Wesley's face changed. That was the first time he looked less angry than exposed. Judge Sutter continued. Mr. Kincaid, did you review this care binder before stating that Mrs. Kincaid carried no real responsibility? No, Your Honor. Did you understand the extent of documented caregiving provided by your wife? He hesitated too long, the judge noticed. Mr. Kincaid. I knew she did a lot. A lot is not a legal category, but it is a beginning, the judge said. Miriam asked permission to submit the binder as evidence. Wesley's attorney objected to portions, of course. That is what attorneys do. The judge admitted the medical care-related records subject to later review and allowed Beatrice's statement for the temporary hearing, noting her condition and witness signature. No dramatic gavel. No instant victory parade. Just something better. The truth entered the record. Miriam then asked about Camille, not to shame the affair. Family court had heard worse by breakfast, but because Wesley had claimed work obligations kept him away from caregiving, while several of those work obligations matched dinner receipts, hotel charges, and messages with Camille. Miriam did not need to dwell. She only needed to show that he had choices. On May 12th, you said you missed your mother's therapy review because you were at a vendor dinner in Charleston. Yes. Miriam handed him a receipt. Was Camille Arden also at that dinner? He glanced back. Yes. Was it a vendor dinner? It was business-related. Only 2 entrees, his attorney stood, are. Elevance, Your Honor. Miriam said, credibility and allocation of marital time and resources, while respondent provided care. Judge Sutter allowed limited questioning. Wesley's answers became shorter. The portrait changed, not all at once, but enough. By the time Miriam finished, the man who had walked in as the sole provider looked more like a man who had outsourced both care and conscience to the woman he now wanted to call useless. Then Beatrice asked to speak, not with her voice, with her pad. Naomi helped her roll forward. The judge allowed it gently, with breaks if needed. Beatrice held up the first page. Marina bathed me. Second page, Marina fed me. Third, Marina learned my pills. Fourth, Wesley loves applause. Fifth, Marina loved me when nobody clapped. The courtroom was silent. Wesley put his hand over his eyes. For one foolish, human second, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered every night I had stood in the hallway holding his mother upright while he told strangers he was her rock. Judge Sutter thanked Beatrice and ordered a short recess. In the hallway, Wesley approached me. Miriam stepped slightly between us, not blocking, just present. He looked shaken. Marina, he said, I was angry. I looked at him. That was not anger. That was your opinion without makeup. He flinched. You humiliated me in there. No, I said. Your mother told the truth. You recognized yourself. His face tightened. She did not have to write that. Yes, I said. She did. Because you left her only one working hand and still expected her silence. He looked at me then, really looked, maybe for the first time in years. Not at the wife who made things smooth, not at the caregiver in the hallway. At the person who had survived being useful without becoming invisible. "I did love you," he said. "I know." That surprised him. I continued, "That is part of what made it so cruel." The temporary ruling did not give me everything. Real life rarely does. Judge Sutter ordered temporary spousal support while the divorce proceeded, noting my 4-year absence from the workforce due to documented family caregiving. She declined Wesley's request for reimbursement at that stage. She ordered both parties to exchange full financial records. She stated clearly that non-financial contributions to the marriage would be considered. She also warned both sides against disparaging each other in public filings or family communications. Then she looked at Wesley and said, "Mr. Kincaid, you may disagree about property division, but this court will not treat documented caregiving as idleness because it did not come with a paycheck." That sentence did not sound like revenge. It sounded like oxygen. After the hearing, Beatrice asked to see me in a quiet room near the clerk's office. Naomi wheeled her in. Miriam gave us privacy. Beatrice looked tired, but her eyes were bright. I knelt beside her chair. "You should rest." She rolled her eyes. Still bossy, she wrote. I laughed through tears. Then she took my hand. Speaking was hard, but she tried. "Sorry," she said. "No," she squeezed my hand. "Sorry." I knew what she meant. Not for Wesley's affair. Not for the divorce. Not for every word. For the years her needs had become the place where my marriage disappeared. "You did not do this," I said. She shook her head. Her left hand moved slowly across the paper. "I let him be hero because I wanted him to be." That line hurt, because it was honest. She had wanted her son to be the man he posted online. Who would not? Mothers sometimes keep believing because the alternative feels like losing the child twice. I said, "You told the truth when it mattered." She wrote, "So did you." There were also people who tried to make me soften the story once it became known. Wesley's aunt called and said, "You know how men talk when they are hurt." I said, "Yes, that is why transcripts exist." A woman from church sent a message saying divorce was already painful and I should not involve Beatrice. I wrote back, Beatrice involved herself because the lie was about her care. My mother, who had spent years quietly worrying that I gave too much to Wesley's family, came over one Saturday with soup and sat at my table while I organized copies. She ran her fingers over the binder spine and said, "I used to think being strong meant not needing anyone to defend you." I looked at her. "What do you think now?" She sighed. "I think sometimes strong means finally letting the paper defend you because you are tired." That was the first time I let myself cry in front of her about the divorce. Not pretty crying, not controlled, the kind where your whole body admits it has been carrying too much. My mother did not tell me to calm down. She did not offer advice. She just sat beside me and turned the pages of the binder carefully, as if the records were not cold evidence but folded pieces of my life. The divorce took 9 more THS. There were depositions, financial disclosures, appraisals, more hearings, more ugly sentences in polite legal formatting. Wesley tried to soften his court comment later. He said useless housewife had been taken out of context. Miriam included the transcript. Context did not save him. I returned to work slowly. Not at the clinic at first. My certification had lapsed and my confidence had gone thin. I took continuing education classes online. I studied drug interactions again. I worked part-time at a small independent pharmacy where the owner, Mr. Adebio, believed in second chances and properly labeled shelves. The first week, my hands shook when I printed labels. Not because I had forgotten how. Because paid work after years of unpaid work felt like stepping into daylight after living near a dim lamp. I had to learn that competence was still mine even when no one in the room needed me to sacrifice myself. Beatrice moved to a different assisted living residence closer to her sister in Savannah. That was her choice. Wesley objected because it made visits less convenient and looked bad to relatives. Beatrice wrote on her pad, Convenience is not care. I framed a copy of that in my mind. She and I still spoke every Sunday by video. Sometimes she was too tired. Sometimes we mostly sat there while she held up notes. Sometimes she asked about my work. Sometimes she asked whether I was eating. Once, after the final settlement, she wrote, "My son was raised by a good woman and still grew proud. That is on him." I did not know what to say to that. The settlement was fair. The most unexpected part of the final settlement was not the number. It was the language. Miriam insisted that the agreement refer to my years out of the workforce as marital caregiving labor instead of unemployment. Wesley's attorney tried to change it 3 times. Miriam refused 3 times. "It matters," she told me. At first, I thought it was just legal wording. Then I saw it on the page, marital caregiving labor. 4 years of my life had finally been given a name that did not sound like laziness. I signed that page more slowly than the others. Not because the settlement was beautiful, it was not. It was painful, practical, and expensive, like most endings adults have to make when love has become paperwork. But that phrase felt like a small headstone for the woman I had been in that house. Not dead exactly, buried under duty, finally marked. Not perfect, fair. The house was sold. I received a portion that recognized both marital equity and the economic impact of my years out of work. Wesley kept more retirement than I wanted him to, and I received more support than he wanted to pay. Neither of us left untouched. That is divorce. It does not hand you a clean ending. It hands you papers and asks whether you can build a door from them. Camille did not last. I heard that from no one dramatic. A former neighbor saw Wesley at a grocery store alone and told me, not unkindly, that he looked tired. I felt less satisfaction than I expected. By then, revenge had lost its glamour. I did not need him ruined. I needed him removed from the place where his definition of me had been allowed to live. The last time I saw him in person was at the final hearing. He looked older, less polished. He approached me near the courthouse steps after everything was signed. "I should not have said that," he said. "No. I know you did a lot for Mama." I looked at him. "That is still too small." He swallowed. "I know." Maybe he did. Maybe he was learning. Maybe he was only tired of being the villain in a story where the transcript existed. I did not have to decide. He said, "She asks about you more than me." That sounds like something to think about. He looked away, then I walked to my car, alone. Not abandoned, alone, there is a difference. A year after the hearing, I moved into a small duplex with a lemon tree in the yard and a kitchen just big enough for a round table. I bought dishes I liked, not the ones Wesley preferred because they looked more adult. I took evening walks. I slept through the night for the first time in years. Sometimes I woke up anyway at 2 in the morning, body ready for a call, a fall, a medication alarm, a cough. Healing is not the absence of memory. It is the moment your body learns the emergency has ended. I still keep the blue care binder, not because I want to live inside that pain, because it reminds me that what I did was real. There are women everywhere carrying binders no one sees, medication charts in kitchen drawers, school forms in glove compartments, care calendars on refrigerators, insurance notes in spiral notebooks, receipts folded into wallets, texts proving who asked for help and who disappeared. The world loves to call that natural. A woman's touch, a mother's instinct, a wife's duty, a daughter's patience. But work does not stop being work because someone does it with love. Care does not become idleness because it happens in a house. Responsibility does not vanish because the person carrying it is wearing slippers instead of a suit. My husband said I was just a useless housewife in court. Then, the judge asked who raised his mother back from the life his speeches could not manage. The answer was not complicated. I did. Not perfectly. Not alone every second. Not as a saint. As a woman who showed up, learned the pills, changed the sheets, answered the calls, kept the logs, and told the truth when the man who benefited from all of it tried to make me disappear. That is my story. If someone has ever dismissed your unpaid work, your caregiving, your quiet responsibility, or the years you gave without applause, tell me what you would have done in that courtroom. Share this with someone who needs permission to stop calling her labor nothing. Before you go, tell me your name and the city you're watching from. I want to know where this story found you.